Hello and welcome to Plus Sports on PlusTvAfrica. My name is Mikhail Tinubu. Welcome to the show on this Monday morning. It's been a weekend of terrific and terrible World Cup football as for some teams, while others have shined beyond what was expected of them. And I will get to one of those stories very soon. Meanwhile, I have with me this morning Adeyewmi Adesanya, sports pundit right here in Lagos. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Before I get to the World Cup stories, I do want to talk briefly on a story that came up recently about UFC in Africa. Former UFC middleweight champion Israel Adesanya is still keen on UFC Africa, despite his loss to Alex Pereira at UFC 281. Adesanya fell to Pereira on November 13th in New York City at the Madison Square Garden, but he is eyeing an immediate rematch with Pereira and a chance to rewrite the script when it comes to their rivalry in combat sports. UFC President Dana White hinted at the post-fight press conference that there were plans for a debut event in Africa. The promotion is looking at Nigeria and other nations to host an event as soon as next year. After getting word of White's announcement, Adesanya is keen on being a massive presence on the UFC Africa card, with White and the UFC follow up on their plan for an Africa-based event. Adesanya is intent on fighting on the card, even if it means not fighting with the title on the line. Obviously, Africa is a market everyone wants to get into, even in sports. But unlike the other major participants in the UFC, mixed martial arts, as it's called, there is no current Nigerian or African form of combat practice that makes up that mixed martial arts. Most of it is Asian related. The West has adopted a lot of it and created its own versions of combat skills. In Africa, in Nigeria, we don't really celebrate the combat heritage of our culture as much as they do over there. Not anymore, not to the degree that the Asians do. They make movies about it. So can this succeed in Africa, even though we still have a penchant for entertainment via violent sports like boxing? Can this succeed in an environment that doesn't recognize or celebrate cultural combat skills as we used to?
Okay, so you've just kind of put a past tense type reference on it. We do celebrate combat sports. Dembe is huge in northern part of the country, and it's getting a lot of appeal from outside the country. The guys responsible for it are really doing a really good job, and they're looking to get investment, to come into the country. So in terms of celebrating combat sports, we do. Okay. Maybe not as much as they do in the Western world. And to come to UFC, come to Africa, I like Dana's optimism, but his optimism is coming from a perspective of having limited knowledge. So if I look at the landscape of Africa, there are very few countries that can host a UFC event.
True, absolutely.
Once you take out Rwanda, take out Senegal, maybe South Africa, yeah, and maybe the non-African countries, Nigeria can't host it. Let's tell ourselves the truth. Because there's so many things that go into hosting a UFC event. One, we don't have any indoor arena unless we want to take up a church space that hosts 100,000 people, which is very unlikely. Unless we're going to do a stadium. And I think the largest stadium we have is the Abuja Stadium. And we know the peculiarities surrounding hosting things at the Abuja Stadium. So that eliminates Nigeria somewhat. But then we could, you never know. Nigeria has shown over time that when there's a will, there's a way. All you need is maybe one governor that has the political will to ensure that it happens.
When there's money on the line, when there's popularity and the image of the country is on the line, obviously we can get it done. In Africa as a whole, you've spoken about investments being pursued in terms of trying to increase the popularity of combat sports like Dembe around the country, around Africa. Do you suppose then that UFC will bring the kind of spotlight that allows for that investment?
Oh, definitely. Of course, you also have practitioners of MMA already in Nigeria, trying to do that thing. And I believe that with the partnership of UFC, that creates a conveyor belt for these guys to be able to potentially move. Even if they're not going to move to the UFC, there's the EFC.
But then I wonder though, because even if the likes of you and I aren't as familiar with the most cultural combat sports from every corner of Africa, and UFC might bring the spotlight to that, there are certain combat styles that do not fit the mixed martial arts that is practiced in the UFC. Obviously, wrestling of all kinds are always welcome, but Muay Thai, for example, the stance in itself does not lend itself to the UFC model.
Yeah, but there are Muay Thai guys who've moved into the UFC and have made good use of the stance. So that's why it's called mixed martial arts. It embraces all forms of martial arts, as long as it's within the rules of the UFC. So for Africa, it's a great opportunity for investment, for talent development, for development of human capital. So the opportunities are endless. And for those who have made investment in mixed martial arts in their own small way, and those who have made investments in the likes of Nembe, it's an opportunity.
I wonder then about the influence that those foreign forms of martial arts will eventually have on our martial arts. Because as you said, even Muay Thai fighters have had to adapt their style and pick up other styles in order to compete effectively. Takedowns are a big part of how UFC works, and some fighters are takedown specialists, but have very little ability in every other discipline. True. So going forward, if the UFC Africa card does take shape, might we see not only an improvement in our martial arts, the presence, our knowledge and our awareness of it on television, showcasing, being broadcasted regularly, but are we likely to see even our martial arts starting to evolve to take on more skill sets from other martial arts from the foreign countries?
Okay, so it's a two-way street here. One is there'll be some exchange, technical exchange, which will benefit the practitioners of MMA locally. The flip side is the guys doing MMA already, they have viewers, they have audience outside Nigeria, outside Africa. In fact, their largest audience is in the US and Brazil. So they also have opportunity of exporting our culture into those other areas. Because look, the world is so small now with the internet, with YouTube and all that, to push your agenda, and the pie is big. All you need is just a little piece of it for you to build your own potential African UFC.
Well, should this happen, and I hope it does, we might be seeing a movie about it come to the cinema very soon.